Welcome to Ladies-in-Law, where real-world advice meets professional wisdom and empowerment in realms of law and business. Your hosts, Lisa Goucher, Dawn Smith, and Kellye Raymond, bring you innovative strategies, practical guidance, and inspirational stories. Join us as we inspire and support women to thrive in traditionally male-dominated fields. We're here to promote inclusivity and provide practical advice for success. Lisa here today with Dawn, and I am super stoked to tell you Lexlee Overton, Mind Over Law, is here today with us again. If you haven't listened to the previous podcast where Lexlee shared all the things about how to get the most out of your work-life balance, you need to go back and listen to that.
It was so good.
Yeah, and today, it's exciting. We're in New Orleans. We're actually kind of dragging her out of a conference that she's in so that we can talk about what you're covering in the conference, because it's so pertinent. Here we are in January, and everybody is like thinking about their goals, where they're at in their life. And so, Lexlee, save us.
Yay!
Tell us what we need to know.
I'm so excited to be here. What fun to be here in New Orleans with you.
I know.
Yes.
We went out to dinner last night.
Yes,
it was
great.
a really good time.
It was really good. And the energy here is so fun, which really brings into like talking about when we're creating goals in the beginning of the year, this energy of dreams, right? And people often ask me about like, you talk about high performance and that kind of thing, but what about goals? And we set goals at the beginning of the year and New Year's intention. And an interesting fact is last Friday, which was the second Friday of January, is International Quitters Day.
Yes. I learned that.
Really?
Yes, I learned that for the first time this year. I was like, oh, okay, I got to get past Friday. That's all I have to do.
That is a sad day. That is a sad day.
It's 2 weeks in and we give up, which is a shame, because if you can really, try to stick to something for 21 days, it's a lot easier to stay consistent with it. But this is what we're doing in our conference today. This morning, we spent some time looking at the story of 2024, because it's really important to reflect on where you've been. What was great? What would you do differently? Having awareness of that and then saying, okay, this is where I want to go from here. Because we really are the creators of the story. We're the authors. We are the main character, but we're also the authors of it. And owning that has such power, because then you can really realize that you can truly, I say that with intention, anything is possible.
I don't even really think that hit me so hard when you just said that you're the author of your own story, because I feel like so many times I'm going through my day and I feel so out of control.
Yeah.
Like my life is just leading me as opposed to me leading my life and my story.
Right.
So thank you for saying that, because it really did. It was like, that's true.
But having awareness of that is so important, because we want to be in a space where it doesn't really matter what's happening out here in the world. I want to know how to stay in my power and to stay in the story that I want to create. Oftentimes, there is going to be something that happens. There was something that happened in 2024, I guarantee for all of us, that was unexpected, maybe not wanted, that took us off course, right? Maybe not, didn't keep us on exactly the path that we thought. But the important thing is that you stay within, like you get to choose the response to that, as opposed to allowing it to lead you. But that's how life often is that we're so fast-paced. Life is leading us and we're just responding to the hottest fires. So what I'm trying to teach people is to really to know what your power is, what are the things that get you out of your power, which pull you out, and what are the tools to pull you back in, And the more you have awareness of that, then the easier it becomes when that unexpected thing happens.
So that was kind of a question that I had, is just getting the strength and the stamina to stay in that space. Like, how do you create the strength and the stamina to be able to pull yourself out of that moment where it's just emotion and reaction? How can we train ourselves to be better?
Well, first you have to know what it feels like not to be in that reaction. You have to know what it feels like to be centered, to be grounded. And there are practices that you can do that. But the simple answer to that is it takes practice like anything else. And so we can start with, if like we're saying at the beginning of the year, like what are your goals? This is creating a vision, whether you're creating it for your business and a business plan, which I like to call the drawer plan because it often gets written and then it's in the drawer. But the vision for where you want to be this year, and where do you want to put your energy? What roles do you want to take on? What are the goals that you want to achieve in those roles? And knowing what you want it to feel like so that you have awareness when you're off course. But then having the practices to pull you back, right? But the very first thing when it comes to vision is and goals is to get really clear. So one of the barriers to actually achieving these goals that we set is that we don't really have a clear vision. There's a vision, but it's not in depth, right? So if we think about, I want to redo my kitchen this year. This is an example of this. And if I'm not a very visual person, like I don't think although our brains do think in pictures, I don't notice details visually of things. So if I want to sit down with a construction manager that I'm going to hire to design my kitchen, and if I just sit down and talk about it and I don't give him anything else, and then he's going to go out and hire the people to do it, how likely do you think that it's going to be that my kitchen comes out the way I think?
Like maybe 10%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you want to have in-depth vision, not just for the kitchen, but for any goal, right? So that kitchen needs to be down to the smallest thing, the knobs, the color, if I'm going to have scones somewhere, like everything needs to be detailed so that there's a clear picture so that those that are coming in to build it know what that is. It's the same thing for your vision in your life and your goals. You have to get really crystal
Got to
clear.
drill down. Keep drilling down.
Details, right? And we were talking last night about vision boards. And what's the cool thing about vision boards is, I just said it, the brain thinks in pictures. That's one of the reasons why those help us to stay in the details of things. But really getting clear, like what is that? And if you're running a business and you have a team, that gets drilled down into each of your team members knowing what their role is that contributes to this big vision that your company has for the year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I think in concept, it makes a ton of sense, but how do you do it?
You have to take the time to reflect and to really break it down into pieces. And that's the problem, is that most of the time we're so fast that and even if we're saying, I wanted this goal this year, how am I going to make that happen? We just write that down and then we just think it's going to happen. So one, getting more detailed about it. And I want to tie one more thing that's really important for just having a clear vision. It also needs to be tied to purpose, because I might have, if I have a goal out there and I'm not really tied to it in some way, then the motivation is not there to do the hard things that are going to make you get there. The practices on a daily basis that are going to be the consistency that build the foundation for you to actually achieve the thing. Okay. So, and I think with purpose, we need to look at our goals not just being self-centered purpose. When they're that, it's more about trying to fill a void of enoughness in some way. When we can tie our purpose to others, then it even has more meaning. So for example, I just did this with my 17-year-old son. He used to do all kinds of crazy things with me.
He's your test animal.
He's so lucky, but he probably doesn't feel very lucky.
He's done vision board. He rolled his eyes. I said, you can bring your girlfriend and she can make one too. Then he was okay with it, right?
That's so good. Buy in.
That's right, exactly.
But we did set goals for his next semester, and I did this in November because November was my birthday at the end of the year. So I was like, set goals with me. So we just set for his next semester. And one of the things that is a failure point in achieving goals is that we don't have stakes or rewards or activation. So the stake is what is going to happen if I don't do this? People are more motivated to avoid pain than to actually do something for pleasure. And then if it happens, what's my reward? And the activation part is like sharing it. So for him, he has a goal for his grades. And I said, David, we're going to tie it to a stake. Where do you want to go this summer? And we picked the Grand Canyon. And I picked a really cool trip where we get to go whitewater rafting and we get to sleep out under the stars on cots with no tents. He's like, that's so cool. I was like, if you don't get... And I'm going to hold you to this, if you don't get the grades, so be careful about what level you're setting that at. then the trip doesn't happen for either one of us.
Oh.
So I also have goals that I set, and here's my goal. And if I don't achieve this, then you don't get to do that, right? So it's a really tight, a strong stake for both of us. It's not just about, it's not exactly. We're more likely to do it when it's tied to other people. Yeah. I have a business coach that his rewards are like that, vacations. He will not go on his vacation if he doesn't meet this business goal, which makes his wife very invested in him meeting the goal, right? He's like, I have a lot of things I have to do to have that. And she's very tolerant of that because she knows, and he's dead serious about it. But I made a goal with David last semester that he had to do a certain thing with his grades and not miss homework, because he's going to die if he listens to this. If you miss homework, we're done.
Yeah.
Because that's just the thing. He's a boy. And sure,
it's with girls too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't have that problem with my daughter. She was an overachiever, but he just doesn't like homework. So I made that a condition, and he really wanted to get a truck, and it was going to be a used vehicle. I said, if you miss homework, because there's no excuse for missing homework, it's not happening. He missed. I held to that. Mm-hmm. So he didn't get it. So the vehicle is off for another semester, right? So he got the consequence of that. So I think he's really serious this time around. But generally, just think about it. You want to have some kind of stake that you're like, it's like it becomes a non-negotiable for you, that you really want to do this. That's a part of motivation. And then a reward, like reward yourself, but also milestones. So if you wait until the end, that's too hard. So we built some small rewards in for him based upon 6 weeks scoring. If you get this, then you're going to get this reward. And I do the same thing for myself. Oh, if I maintain my physical exercise routine, then I'm going to give myself this. So you build little celebrations, because intrinsically we need it for motivation to keep it going. So that's one of the ways of doing that. And then activation is sharing it, putting it out to the world. I told you guys last night that I wanted to write a book. I told the group this morning in the workshop, I said, not one, I am, right? I'm announcing it. I'm holding myself accountable and putting it out to the world. But that also brings people in to support you on that. Mm-hmm. So if you put it in a business sense with your team, you're announcing these goals, you're showing them how they can contribute to that based upon what they're bringing in. And if you don't meet this, then that affects the whole team being able to have the reward, or we're all going to have, we're going to lose something, right? Because it's all tied together, which actually creates an energy of wanting to support one another in a way like, oh, let me help you with that, because we're all in this together.
Mm-hmm. I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, we do structure our firm. We have teams, and we have team goals to meet. And we talk about all the time, like if you have something going on and you can't get this one done, then hey, pick somebody else up, right? It's all about kind of relying on your people to be able to accomplish the goals for the week. But the buy-in associated with letting somebody else down, that's different. I mean, that's really different. If you have this goal that you have to meet and you have to do your part to meet it, and if you don't, you let the other person down, I mean, that's going to have a lot of power for a life. It does for me.
It does. It makes it a must-have instead of it's nice to have. I want to make this a must-have, not a nice to. And that's important to keep the motivation there and moving you forward, especially when there's something that comes in the way that becomes an obstacle, right? Of figuring it out. I think it's really important in teams. A lot of law firms I work with, we tie bonuses to profit, and everybody knows what they're doing to contribute to that. And if they don't meet, let's say, billable goals, you're affecting everybody's ability to be able to get a bonus because it affects the overall profit. And you can do it that way. You can dial it in like that. And it's really powerful because people are like, oh, it's not just about me. I mean, my team, I'm going to be letting my team members down.
And then you weed people out.
You definitely do. Yeah. And you don't want to keep those people on your team, right? You want the A players. The next thing is a real obstacle to achieving goals is not reviewing them. So the vision board is an example of if you put that up there or you put it on, I have my goals. I took a picture of them and put them in an album on my phone, and I have certain triggers during my day so that I am reviewing them at least twice a day. And you talked about this last night about having it in front of you and then knowing it and going back and revisiting it every day. So it's not the drawer plan. It's got to stay forward in front of you. Talk a little bit about how you did that and what that did for you.
Well, it starts out challenging because it's written on paper, right? I mean, mine are written on paper, and then I take a screenshot. So initially, to just even get that program going of doing it, looking at it, thinking about it, and where I have fallen short, I need more detail. So I really appreciate that information. But when you don't just stick it in a drawer and you have some kind of trigger, a reminder on your phone or on your bathroom mirror or wherever it needs to be for you, something in your car, anytime I'm doing something and I have a lot of car time, I like put a hair tie on my volume knob because, you know, you don't have a hair tie on your volume knob. And so when I see that hair tie on my volume knob, I'm like, oh, I need to go over my goals.
That's wonderful.
And then you memorize your goals. And so then you don't even need the hair tie.
Yes.
You don't need the reminder. And then things start coming to fruition. And then I start writing on that paper, and it's actually like, that's when it really gets beautiful because it starts out all clean and organized and, you know, in your columns and everything. And then as things start changing and you start writing on that paper, and I list prayers for people, and pretty soon I have no space on that 8.5 by 11 front and back. But when I look at it, it's like floods me with all the things that are happening and going on, like in a good way.
Yeah, it's the energy of it. You're keeping yourself in the energy of what you want to create.
Yes.
It's forefront. And that, not doing that is a reason why we often fail. So we talk about triggers. It's amazing with the hair tie. I'm going to share that tip because I just say pick something that you do every single day. Every single day I have coffee, so that's my trigger. When I have my first cup of coffee, I go over my goals. The other thing I loved, if I'm home, every single night I take a bath. So I do it in the bathtub. So something, you know, every single time you sit down at your desk for the first time in the morning could be the trigger. You want to build a trigger that's like, I'm going to bring this in. And when you do that, you're asking yourself questions. So if I'm looking at it first thing in the morning when I'm having coffee, I'm looking at my calendar and I'm asking myself, am I doing something today that's moving me towards that? What is the practice that I'm doing today that is getting me to that goal? Where this week am I dedicating some time to it? So it's not just like I'm reading the goals, although that's important, but you're asking yourself, am I actually investing in the energy of achieving it?
So just practically speaking, if you have everything written down and these are your goals, do you keep track, like kind of Lisa suggested, writing things down about kind of where you're accomplishing little pieces of that overall goal in the same place? Is there something important about writing the progress down?
I think that anything that you do that continues to help you to stay in the energy and helps you to reflect and what is the next thing, whether it's writing, sharing it with someone, talking about it out loud with your partner, you know, something along those lines. Writing is usually very good in connection with the mind and keeping you thinking about what am I doing that's moving this forward. Part of what we do when we set goals, when I teach to set goals, it's not just the goal of this, you know, let's say I have one goal, like write a book. I want to write a book this year. One of the things that we write down and the question that we ask is, if I'm going to do that, and this is another reason why we fail when we don't do this, if I'm going to write a book this year and I set a goal that I want to publish next January, what do I have to do on a daily basis to make that inevitable? And that means my practice has to be that I have to be writing every day. It doesn't matter if it goes in the book. I have to be writing every day to be able to have that happen. I know that. And so I write that down and I create, it's literally, what's the daily practice? So when you ask the question of how do I build that resilience not to get pulled out, there's daily practices that you have to do, even with your goals, that you have to hold yourself to. So we don't rise. It's the 7 habits.
The most effective people.
You know, who's it written by?
I can't think of it.
Can't think of his name.
I can see the book.
We'll put it in the notes.
Totally want to credit him, but this is what he says. We do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our standards. The standards are the practices. So you have to commit to the practices, and the consistency builds the foundation, and consistency builds confidence that you can do it. So one of the things we write down in the beginning is that this is the goal. What do I have to be doing every single day or every week, whatever you think the time frame is, but usually you're looking at it daily, that is going to make it inevitable that this happens. And we ask the question too, what people or resources do I need to tap into to make this inevitable? So those are all written down in one place.
I was just going to say, that's a lot of thinking. That's a lot of time. Like a lot of people talk about a think week, going into the new year, to where you're just talking about in your own space, in your own mind, to your own self, reflecting on the prior year, setting that next level, the goals that you want to accomplish, and then how you're going to make it.
Right. And it doesn't have to take a week. I mean, we're going to do it in 3 days in this workshop. I want to say this. I heard this from a mentor of mine, and I thought, oh, that is so true. Most people spend more time planning their vacations than they do planning their lives. The year.
That's right.
And, taking the time, you can think about it. When you're on vacation, how much detail there is, and all the things you talk about, and we could do this, we could do that, and this trip, and all the things that we could do, and, the flights and all, it takes a lot of energy to do that, a lot of time to think about it. And most people spend more time doing that than they do creating the goals that they want to do.
The anticipation, right?
Yes.
So, Lexlee, when you're talking about, you have to have wins in there, because they always say, I can't remember who it was, but I read some book or some motivational thing wherein it said those small wins in there are necessary for the anticipation. Like, you always want something scheduled. You always want something to look forward to. So a vacation is a really good example, because who doesn't love a vacation? But even in planning your goals, when you have the small wins that are in there where you're going to celebrate, that's anticipation. Right. And now we're all at a similar place. Your son is a junior, right?
Yes.
So you're going to be an empty nester soon. Dawn's an empty nester. I'm an empty nester. And the days and weeks and months just fly by. And if you don't have, like me personally, I feel like I squander them if I don't have some kind of plan of what I want, because the days and weeks are going by so quickly.
Yes. So this takes intention. So it does take the time to reflect. And there's something about reflecting about, where you are, where you want to go. I say that the first step is awareness. You cannot change anything. You cannot create anything without awareness. And so that is reflection, and to think about what you really, really want. So those daily standards are very, very important. Those help to really keep you accountable. And when we think about manifesting or creating, manifestation is a result of our most dominant beliefs, actions, and feelings.
Repeat that.
Yes, say that one more time.
Manifestation is a result of our most dominant beliefs, actions, and feelings. So if I said to you, let's create these business goals, and then I said, how likely do you think it is that you're going to achieve those? Most of the time, if they're big, hairy, audacious goals, right? Like Jim Collins says. And, I like to think, I pride myself on this because I have done it. And when I started this business, when I was closing out my law practice, starting this business, people around me looked at me like I was crazy. And I think we should be setting goals and dreams that people look at you like you're a little crazy. And they're like, yes, that's what's going to happen, right? But if you set those kind of big goals, but if you really ask yourself, how likely am I going to achieve this? Most people are going to answer, if you said 1 to 10, 10 being you're going to knock it out of the park, most people are going to answer somewhere like a 4, 5, or 6. That's because it's not built, the story isn't there. The story they're telling themselves doesn't support that being inevitable.
So how do you do that then?
Well, one of the things you could just say, what if I played a game with that? If I set these business goals or personal goals, and let's say business goals, and I said, if I told you that if you don't achieve them, then you will lose all of your financial wealth and you can never start another business, how likely then do you think that you would make those goals happen?
100%.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about the story. It's all about making it a must-have as opposed to it would be nice to have. A nice to have is going to get you a score of 4 or 5.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I guess, how do you, I'm just trying to get my head around something that's not so catastrophic, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
So, like, how do you,
Right.
you got to put in those, that story behind it. So
That even is a practice. So I just did it when I said I want to publish a book, and I corrected myself. No, I am. That's a practice of telling the story differently and of saying that, no, I'm owning that this is going to happen. So if manifestation is your most dominant beliefs, you have to believe and know that it's going to happen. Actions, you have to have the daily practices, you have to commit to it that are going to make that happen. And then the feeling is, the part of the motivation is staying in the feeling of what it's going to be like
Feel
to have
like
it. That's
to have
the
it.
purpose.
Feel like it.
That's the purpose. The purpose of the kitchen for me is not to have a pretty kitchen. When I think about this kitchen, I want to redesign it where it's an even more of a warmer place for my family and my friends to gather and for us to have laughter and joy. And that makes me want to do the headache of living without a kitchen probably for 3 months, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to get that, not because it's going to be pretty. So the feeling part of it, of tapping into the purpose. And you just heard my purpose. Of course it benefits me, but I said where my friends and my family gather. So it's about others too. So it's really thinking and really being intentional about the things that really, really motivate us, that make that happen.
Well, Lexlee, can I ask you, so because we do have like a wide range of followers, not all legal, and a lot of them are in jobs, they're just doing their thing and they feel stuck. So when you come across somebody that is trying to figure out what is my next thing, like how do I even delve, like how do you tap into somebody who maybe doesn't even know how to begin the process to figure out what to do next, and they're just like status quo, but status quo isn't cutting it anymore?
So that takes reflection, because people, when they say that they're stuck, they have a belief that they're stuck and that there isn't any other choice. So then it's guiding them through that is a story.
That's the story that they're selling to
That's the
theirself,
story
and
they
they're
believe.
believing it.
And
Yes.
therefore that's what they're living, because that's
Okay.
their most dominant belief. So then it's opening up to them the possibility of what else could be there. And sometimes you just have to give them the opposite story for people to start to see it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but once you've been living that story for a while,
It's hard.
It's hard.
It is.
So talk about maybe some of the daily things that you can do to keep yourself in the right story. Meditation, journaling. Are there certain things that you can do that help with that?
Like even a simple process of, so let's say I have a word for the year. Do y'all pick a word for the year?
I have picked a phrase.
Okay, what's your phrase?
So mine is done is better than perfect.
Oh, I love that phrase. That's great.
That's great. Shout out to John Morgan. It's John Morganism.
Yes.
I've taken it on for myself this year.
I love that. Do you have a word for that?
I haven't picked one this year, but I typically do.
Yeah. So I have a bracelet, because I have this little kit where you can like hammer in the word. So I have my word right there. So my word for this year is empower. So let's look at that. That's a practice. Or done is better than perfect. So if I want to say my word is empower for the year, every morning, this takes intention though. Is when you say, well, what are the daily practice? It takes daily practice intention. I can ask that and use that as a compass that says, okay, today, what am I going to do to empower my physical body? It may be physical exercise. What am I going to eat? Today, what am I doing to empower my relationships? Am I having healthy talk? Am I gossiping? Am I being negative or judgmental? Do I live in compassion? Using it. And today, did I do something this morning? We are at noon filming this. This morning, did I do something to empower myself or to others today?
Well, I would
So
say the
using
answer
it.
to that is yes, for sure.
Yes.
With everything you've done this morning, but then too, just coming here and being on this podcast.
Right.
You're empowering us and empowering our listeners.
Right. And so you use that for anything, like even the decisions. Like if I said my word is empower and someone asked me to come to do something, let's say go teach in something or do a program, I'm going to ask myself, is that in alignment with my core values? One, but is it in alignment with where I want to be this year? Mm-hmm. Is it going to take away from something else? So you're really intentionally making choices as opposed to allowing the world to pull you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And meditation is a practice. There's so many, meditation scares people. The word meditation just scares people.
It's more acceptable now.
Yes.
I think people are kind of coming around.
Well, they
a little
think
bit.
that they can't do it because, they in their minds, we're supposed to be able to sit and not have thoughts. And, the job of our minds is to think. So that if you got to let yourself off the hook for that, there are practices that will help to have that experience. But meditation is like the word, and I might have said this on the last podcast with you guys, meditation is like the word athletics. There's many different sports under athletics. There's many, many different types of meditation that do different things that still will empower you and help you to be more intentional and mindful. You were sharing, Dawn, that you really love the loving kindness meditation. It's so powerful and it really keeping you in a state of being centered, compassionate, kind, not losing energy over judging or resenting people. And, how we are with our energy is very important to be intentional about what we're doing. And when I say energy, I mean physical, mental, emotional energy. There are things that we do that are drains that drain our energy, then affect us having power to do the things that we want to create. If we're really stuck in a place, in your example, that is very draining to people. So it's starting to let people to see, look at the things that you're doing that really aren't empowering you. How could you do that differently? And what's one small action that you could take? We're not asking, if you show up today that your whole world needs to be different tomorrow. It's just one step that makes a difference, that puts you in the energy of putting something into change.
Mm-hmm. That whole concept of just one step at a time, like how can I be 1% better today?
Yes.
As opposed to me, I get these huge goals and then I don't get those little pieces done right away. And then all of a sudden I've got to do, 100% or 90% like in a really short period of time.
Yes.
I think trying to learn and grow into just that, let me just do a little bit better today, and just taking that on and just having that feeling of accomplishment. Maybe you didn't do it today, do it tomorrow. Just if you have a failure, it's okay to just pick up and start going forward again.
Yeah, and that's a reflective practice that could be every day too. If you actually took the time in the evening to say, what went well today? If you had a word, maybe you have a word that you're following. It could be, what did I do today that was empowering? What wasn't? And what do I want to do differently tomorrow? It's not so much that you have to say, I got it 100% correct. No, that's always a learning experience. Well, why didn't I get to where I wanted to be today? What took me off path? What took me out of where my power was? And recognizing that, then you have awareness. Then you have the awareness, you can do it differently tomorrow. Most people just do it and then have a whole story about how they failed and not even really looking at, well, what could I do differently and what did I actually gain or learn from that? Make it in a more empowering story instead of a story that's draining. Every you've heard that before. Every failure is an opportunity for growth, all of those things. But it's true. If I look at something that I didn't, maybe it was seen as a failure. Let's say you had a difficult client and a client fires you. Well, okay, let me look at that. Where is it that I could grow as a leader? Where is I could grow in my role? What could we do differently as a team that would help that? And also, how can I make that a more empowering story as opposed to, God, I just don't know if I can do this because, of one client.
So I just came to mind, which I hadn't really thought about until I heard Sari Delamont. So she's a jury consultant.
Yes.
I'm part of her coaching program and just love them. And I was listening to her podcast. Well, I love podcasts, by the way. Yeah. But I learned so much because I drive so much. But she was talking about focusing on your successes as opposed to focusing on your failures. She talks about going through focus groups with lawyers and asks them, which one should I watch? We only have time. And a lot of them want to watch the ones that they didn't do as well in or didn't feel as good about. And she tells them, no, let's look at the ones that you felt great about or that you felt better about, because success breeds success.
It's true. That's being in the energy of something to move it forward. I think looking at things that you want to do differently too is a good question to ask. Like, how could I do that differently? But that brings to like the final thing. There's this theory of 300. To really succeed on something, you have to believe. You have to have 100% clarity. We talked about really in-depth clarity. You have to have 100% belief that it's going to happen. And you have to have that 100% of the time. Like, you've got to really be conscious of that. If you have that, there isn't anything that you're not going to achieve. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So the 300.
Yes.
300.
Yes.
I think there's a movie about like 300. Trying to think, this is a good number. Everything's in threes. There's good energy associated with threes. I really love that. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yes.
What's your conference called?
Well, the name of my company is Mind Over Law. The program that we have for women leaders is our peak performance program. Yeah. So.
Okay, let's say it one more time because we're going to cut that and do that one more time.
The name of my company is Mind Over Law, and the program that we do these workshops in is for our women leaders. It's mostly women lawyers, but there are executives and other organizations and things that are included too. And that's called our Peak Performance Program.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. Thank you for taking the leap of faith on yourself to create such a great company to where you're empowering people.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your empowering word with us and taking the time. And thank you guys for tuning in to listen to Lexlee Overton again. We are so grateful that she was here. I missed the first time she was here. So
I anticipate that you'll be on again.
Yes.
So Dawn,
I hope so.
I think we need to implement what she just shared today.
Yeah.
And then by the time we get her back on.
Like at the beginning of the next quarter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she'll let me lead you through the little goal setting exercise and then do it.
That's good.
That'd be great.
100%. We'll do that.
Well, if anyone has any comments, we would love for you to comment below or email us at hello@ladiesinlaw.com. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, so glad you're here.
All right.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Ladies in Law. We hope you're walking away inspired and ready to shake things up in law and business. Don't forget to hit subscribe and let us know what you think. Spread the word and share this podcast with your network. Follow us on socials for all the behind-the-scenes fun and sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. Until next time, keep rocking it, keep breaking the mold, and as always, keep aspiring to inspire.